This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out trueleafmarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And thank you for all the support.
There I am. Welcome to Civilization Cycle.
And
I see
there
David
I am,
Dubai in there.
too,
but
yeah,
I don't see him.
joining
I hope we're
right
not
back.
having another
Come on, Mike.
glitch like last
Got to
week.
get the camera in.
Let me check the stream.
Got it. There you go.
Check it
Good
out.
afternoon, everyone. Ransom, you can't hear me, you can't see me. That's kind of crazy. Tech, we had the same issue
A
last
little
week,
bit of
but
delay. Let's check it.
we are
Nope,
here.
he's there. It's a glitch.
A glitch in the matrix, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. And anybody new that's watching, thank you so much for your valuable time joining us. We're going to talk about plastics tonight out here in Taiwan. So I had a chance to chat with a couple of people at Formosa Plastics, which is part of Formosa Chemical Company. We're going to talk about what's going to get really lean on the plastics. Got some good info for you on that. Also, it looks like tankers are transiting with or without that blockade going on. I want to talk about the gaslighting going on in America compared to what the rest of the world's news is. That could be something of interest to look at, and basing your analysis and your risk assessment and how you're going to make plans moving forward. And please share this. You're going to have to copy the link and share it out because the algorithm has been none too kind because we're talking about all these 2030 goals that seem to be set. And now Australia has a massive fire in one of the only two refineries. And now one of them's offline. So they're talking about canceling all flights in Australia, but they were the hardest hitters, pipe hitters going down for the COVID restrictions. Australia seems to be hitting on the 2030 goals far ahead of Europe. So, talking about these issues of, wait a minute, all the Agenda 2030 goals being, achieved in Australia as a lockdown continent, that seems to be happening way ahead of schedule. And now just disruptions in air flights. You're not going to be able to fly in Australia. At least the local flights, the internationals are still coming in and out. Of course, they need the business. But they're saying the fuel's disrupted because of the refinery fire. And what are the chances to one of the two refineries? You think there'd be extra security around that during all these disruptions anyway from the Middle East oil? And suddenly they have another fire. So, I want to go into a few of those things tonight. But Ransom, yeah, I do believe that we are having another glitch in the matrix here. And I got my studio set up upstairs pretty much. We'll be in the studio next time with proper lighting, better mic, and I'm changing continents. Also trying to set up a second home base here. So if one, boom, escape to the next. And yes, I've had many a comment asking me, well, okay, you're over in Taiwan now. You're in America. You got both those places set up. What happens if both of them fail? My answer, Sumba Island in Indonesia is where I will meet you on the south coast with a handful of surfboards. And if it gets down there, the world is truly ended, ED. So the third and final complete run to the end of the world bug out spot that for me is Sumba Island, Sumba, Sumba Island in Indonesia. Look it up on a map. If you can get there, that's where I'll be if all this goes south in America and in Asia, Sumba. Well, I should say in more, Eastern Asia over here, like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, sort of thing. Anyway, great intro, Ransom. I love the aliens dancing. That was super cool with the old Beastie Boys song. That was well done. I'm going to actually run that through on my intro. That was super cool. If you did watch the Groove and Aliens going off to the Ransom's mix of the old Beastie Boys classic, DJ Ransom putting it up here. Nice, man. All right, anyway, on with the show. And remember, thank you for joining us tonight. CivilizationCycle.com if you want to get our show notes. And also, please share the link out there because, again, algorithm's not doing it because of our conversation depth here. So right back to you, Ransom. Take it away.
Well, you hit all the stuff I was going to talk about there.
All right, show's over. Bye for now.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to convince everybody that there's going to be almost a complete shutdown of aviation and the whole freedom to travel around the world via that aviation. Major changes happening, and right now they're just like I think we said it like maybe a week or 2 weeks ago that it's there's these little games going on in the corporate and the national level. It's like a dog eat dog. Who's going to be the last one standing? There can only be one. And this is happening in the AI, in the food. And, to start off with the food, though, for a long time, we had many, 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 many companies around the world, nationally, on the state level, and even locally that produced food for people. But slowly over the last 30 years, almost all of those companies have been bought up by a larger company, which in turn was bought up by a larger company, which in turn was bought by a larger company, and until there's only like 6 or maybe it's 5 now main companies that have all these subsidiaries that supposedly make the food. And then with the flight stuff, that's all you're seeing is Europe has maybe 6 weeks of jet fuel left. We got however you say this, Lufthansa to cut capacity, ground in effect aircraft to tackle higher costs.
Oh,
You got
Lufthansa, the German
Lufthansa.
airline. Very efficient Lufthansa.
I kept wanting to say the Luftwaffe, but it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
That's
from
not it.
that same base root word. Absolutely, it is.
And then here you got Spirit bankruptcy, exit flux as jet fuel prices surge. And this one's, really kind of caught my eye. And there's a couple of these out there. This is just the one I could find real fast before we started. But the Department of War in talks with the automakers like World War II to start producing weapons and robots. But
Yeah,
let's go.
Ransom, leave that on there. Leave that slide there for a second. Because please, everybody, frame this in what the frame it is. We are moving to a war economy, and there will be nothing else. And the lockdown of our planet with the resumption of a war economy, you just pinged it there, Ransom. What did we do in World War II? We took everything that was making consumer goods and turned them into armament manufacturers, period. Rosie the Riveter, Victory Gardens,
Right.
all
You
these
see,
things, that's all that time. All the men went, so Rosie the Riveter needed to come in.
and this all works into that same thing. You keep hearing the World War II phrases. And when you start looking at the food, this incrementalism that has been the weapon of basically, I'm going to go ahead and call it the New World Order because that's what the people that are running it call it, whether it's to rile up the conspiracy theorist or, they're just telling you the truth, which I think it's the latter. Check this out. So I asked Google here food prices from 2015 to 2026, just for the last decade. And it says food prices in the US rose approximately 38.6%, might as well be 40% from 2015 to 2026, averaging 3% annual inflation with peak food at home inflation rate of 11.4 in August of 2022, which was right after the vid, right? Whenever they tried to wind that down. It says while 2023 and 2024 saw stabilization of 40% higher than a decade ago food prices. I like how they say that stabilization. And that's what we were talking about kind of last week with the oil. They want to stabilize all these prices at a new low high or a new high low, right? A new high low. And it's kind of the Walmart business model where they slowly raise the prices up all year. And then guess what? For Black Friday, they're rolling back prices. It's a special deal where it goes back to the already inflated price it was a year ago, right? So this is what's basically they're doing this with food. And on a 10-year scale, think about this. This is might as well be 40% increase in your food since then. And then when you start seeing disposable income ending, the companies that provide all the stuff for disposable income, and not just disposable income, but richer upper class people, maybe upper middle class to rich people that don't like to go out of their house and they like to order from home. They're big fans of that because you can buy food, you can buy flowers, you can buy everything under the sun at the QVC, but they're filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Yeah, let me go into this here for you. Just let me drop this window. I had a couple images I wanted to share as well, and can't seem to get my images working here. But to add on to your Qantas here thing, the IMF came out just yesterday and said 6% is what we're looking for, and inflation is going to be literally uncontrollable because they don't know any of the metrics that are being used right now. So I was trying to get those two screens out to add on to that 3%, which is absolutely garbage with anybody. I would trade your 36.6% food inflation rate for anything I've seen in the last 5 years or 3 years. The anticipated inflation from the International Monetary Fund for the rest of this year is going to be minimum of 6%. And they'd say brace for impact and liquidity crisis, which means 2008 or 2020 all over again with unlimited money printing, which means everything's going to skyrocket. They don't even know where it's going to go. I'm going to say war economy sub 20. I'm going to say sub 20. We'll probably about 18 to 20% inflation, just because of prior. Just look at what's happened in the past. Let me see what we got here. Australia, Qantas to cut domestic flights amid fuel price surge. So this is for Qantas. Lufthansa's doing the same thing. Now, this is Qantas down in Australia. And you notice, what are they all taking the same playbook? Exactly. But wait, what is that playbook, Ransom? That playbook is exactly the goal in 2030 that you will fly less. You're going to fly less. And let me pull up some 2030 goals using Grok and ask it like, hey, Grok, what do you think about the 2030 goal of not flying as much? And you'll be shocked on how these things overlap pretty succinctly. So the continued volatility in fuel prices and global economic conditions, the group has reduced domestic capacity in Q4 2026 by 5%. That was a couple months ago for this release. Now we're here, fuel shortages. Australia's second largest refinery just went up in flames. So they lost their refining capacity in the country. They really got nothing left. But again, weren't they the poster child for this 2030 goal? Everybody was the first to do this. And you look at it, and I would say the $120 price tag is too low, because I want to bring up another news article I saw. In Singapore, they unloaded a ship of oil yesterday. This is all over Asian news. I don't know if you're seeing in anything American news yet. The price at the unload was $210 a barrel. 210. That was in a Singapore unload yesterday. So any of these prices that we're seeing on the futures market, like, oh, it's $100, oh, it's $120. In the real world, people are willing to pay almost double that. Right now, it's at 95. That was more than doubling off the offshore price on the onload on a cash basis, outbidding all of the other people who wanted that fuel. Singapore's like, we'll pay anything to get it. Literally, we're going to pay $210 a barrel. This is the future. This is what they're going to have to do. Countries are going to need to continuously outbid what is the quoted price on the market to get it. This is the future. Oh, we're closely monitoring the situation, given the ongoing uncertainty in global fuel supply chains. You mean the planned constriction of all energy to bring us into 2030 supply chain plan? Yeah, I get you. But I really, believe it, Ransom, that we are at the end of this thing here. This is not going away. This is absolutely not going away.
Well, I can put your fears to rest here. I can put your fears to rest.
Yeah.
See, because, I was going down the same road here with the Agenda 2030 timeline just earlier today. And I found out, that we're just completely crazy. We're conspiracy theory nuts. And let me show you why. So I asked it about depopulation. I misspelled it, but it understood what I said. Depopulation agenda that are real. And so I got the AI overview here. Scientists' demographic data indicate that there is a global shift towards shrinking population, and it is happening, largely driven by declining fertility rates rather than a centralized, malicious agenda to kill people. Okay, so here's the real trends driving depopulation: voluntary fertility decline, sub-replacement fertility, global aging, impact of past policies. And then when you get down here, it says contextualizing common conspiracy claims. UN Agenda 2030, the UN's 2030 agenda is set of 17 sustainable development goals aimed at ending poverty and promoting health, not a covert plan for mass murder. But, I didn't even bring up Agenda 2030, but obviously that's a common thing. And then here's another one. I'm not going to read it out loud, but you can see it. It's talking about the intravenous medications and Bill Gates and WEF plans. But look, so I clicked on their fact-checking website here, and I just thought that we could go down here and find out what the biggest, conspiracy theory misinformation about the 2030 agenda is. And it says, let's see here. And this is really funny, the stuff that it says here. Let's see. The theory of a new world order. See, I was completely insane saying that, despite many of these people that are part of these Bilderberg Club style, organizations saying that, because they said it, then I said it. But it turns out this theory is based on the idea that the Bilderberg Club style formed a small group of the most powerful people in the world, governs and the destines of the planet to their benefit. And then there's the great reboot theory. So there's no reset, despite Klaus Schwab talking about a reset. That was completely
Reboot,
crazy.
reset is the same thing.
Right. Well,
Reboot your computer, reset your computer.
Right. We were completely crazy. This was proposed in Davos after the pandemic, and the UN's Build Back Better vision, which remember came out at the same time as Biden's Build Back Better, because, you got to hammer in those phrases for it to take hold. But that theory focuses on the economic dimension. It suggests that there's an orchestrated plan by the most powerful countries to appropriate all the world's wealth. They claim the intentional creation of the pandemic, but here's trickle down communism. But when we really start getting down in here to the things that they're saying, this is all the stuff that we talk about. Driving prices. Here's some forcing. This is some more disinformation. Evidently, this isn't true. So if you've read articles or heard these people say it, you're wrong. So forcing citizens to eat insects instead of meat, confine the world's population to neighborhoods where they cannot leave without permission under 15-minute cities, because that's complete conspiracy theory, I guess.
That's called a country right now. You just have a wider range. You're not allowed to leave without permission from any country right now. So
and here's another one that completely is not happening anywhere, not in Asia, not in the United States, not in the UK, is feminize men to reduce the world's population. I just wanted to, make sure that you knew that these
that
are
I
all
know that we didn't know. And can I go on with? Let me add something to that. 'Cause this dovetails right in there. If I could share a screen with you, I think this is the right one.
Yeah, here.
Because I did while you were holding on that placeholder there. Aviation Zone 2030. Again, what it says about sustainable development goals for 2030 about aviation and travel. The Agenda 2030 promotes sustainable travel. Now, down in Singapore, also just this last week, interestingly, they started to add in their sustainable fuel tax, which means they're using, biofuels in the airplanes. So that cost for them to build the biofuel plant is being taken on by the customer, not the company to do their own R&D and investment to build a biofuel company that then produces jet fuel. Nope, they're charging every single customer to pay for the biofuel to pay back the company for building their biofuel thing directly under this SDG goal. And these are sustainable development goals of clean energy, and it's not affordable. SDG 7, SDG 11, and STD 13, climate action. And the Aviation Zone 2030 emission sustainability targets have already started, specifically in Singapore, just hitting it for the first time just this last week. So they want to go to net zero emissions by 2050, which means that the fossil fuel won't be in it. It'll be in all, even if they go to 100% biofuel, there's still emissions out of that. So unless they're using electric gravitics and some sort of magnetically powered motors to have zero of anything that burns, even the tires scraping on the runway during takeoff and landing, that will cause some sort of at least small amount of emission because of that contact on the surface. That rubber will have some sort of burn off effect, and that little bit of what you see as a white puff of smoke that comes off the back of the tires, that's emissions in the true sense of it. So there's no way to have zero emissions operating flights. They're impossible. So the aspirational goal is to make fuels less 5% carbon intensive by 2030. That's a minus 5%. Okay, this is where the biofuels comes in. They're already starting that. That's on as we go right now. So the International Agency or Association of Airlines, they're trying to say 10% by 2030. EU is trying to say it's going to overhaul by further than that and 55% by 2030. You don't have an airline industry if you're trying to cut 55% of your emissions. That means you cut half your flights. There's no other way to do it right now. Even if you add biofuels in the fuel, the only way to physically do it is just cut the flights so they don't fly. Now, Australia is ahead of everybody doing this right now. You just saw the articles that me and Ransom put up. They're not going to let people fly. They're going to cut it. Oh, we're hitting our goals. But I saw this incredible, interesting article where they were showing Australia as a continent, the amount of carbon sequestered there, because it's such a large continent and such a low population, there's actually a tremendous excess of sequestration versus output from the human domain. Like the natural landscape of a continent really just exponentially past what any humans can do. I think it was a 770 times more pull in of carbon in the sink of the continent versus what the humans there were putting out. Now, don't put me on the number because it was 770 something, but I was reading through pretty quickly on that. So look up the information yourself, and you'll see it was quite interesting on the note there. So in short, official 2030 goals are about making flyer cleaner, not more expensive so you don't fly. Oh, check that box. If they're going to do all these fuel charges, stipulations, fair price increases, carbon credits that you need to purchase before you travel, they're trying to price you out of the game. So cleaner fuels, different planes, different operations, probably based on AI, so you won't have all that humans need to drive to work to go to the airports and in the towers, etc. And by 2050, it's supposed to growth overall projected. But as you mentioned, with all the population decline based on lower birth rate, to this sort of thing, sicknesses that have just started in the last few years that seem to be ongoing and pretty aggressive there. The world's population is going to be less because almost every country in Asia is having less babies than they did. So in China during it was the 1950s, and it went into the 1960s, like first year 60, 61, 62. They were having women. They were actually, it's called in Chinese, "ingxiong." That's the word for a hero, like an ingxiong in a movie or something. Jianying ingxiong is like a hero in a movie. They call them hero mothers, like ingxiong mama. If you had 10 children, you got an award from the state, and then you got perpetual money from the state. You got preferential housing. You got preferential food choices. Your family was basically put into a golden category because you had 10 kids. Now, at that time, mainly, they got rid of the daughters at birth, and then they got pregnant again to have a boy. So they just rinsed and repeated until they got 10 boys. And then, because the army is like, we're going to go to war with America. We need 10 children. We need a standing army. Everybody have as many boys as you can. If you have over 10, we get. Well, at that time, the infanticide was crazy with the females. So now the imbalance is just like crazy sick. Even like 10, 15 years ago, it was just, I think there was like 45 million more men at the marrying age in that generation than there were women. So obviously the women could choose and be picky and be like, you're not making $1 million and don't have 2 houses. I got 45 other million choices I could choose from. Get out of here. So the abundance of men like really skewed the population. So then they had to go off, and there's like this whole industries of ordering wives from different countries. Ooh, dirty little secret, because they don't have enough women in the country at that. Now there's a whole nother thing, the opposite. Now they want you to have 3 children, and they mainly will give you an incentive to keep your females. Because this still goes. If you don't have a male to carry down the family lineage, they still to this day, dirty little secret, try to, let's say, they were before the infanticide was crazy, but now they say you can have 3 children. So everybody's trying to just keep everything they have for now. So it's weird how it flip-flop into have 10 children, 1 child policy for such a long time. You could, if you had more than 1 baby, you could never get him registered and everything. And 4,000% sure it was only a male they ever kept. And then that skewed the things again. So it was 10 males, and then it was 1 male. And then now it's like, okay, we need females. You focus on having females because we don't have enough girls to repopulate. So the Chinese civilization itself won't have enough Chinese pure blood in it to keep itself going, known as Chinese civilization, because there's too many men. Like they don't want half of another. They're really, in China, it's, you talk about, geez, you all over in America going, well, that's racist over here. You need to go to China and see what it's like there. It's 100% is what they want in the blood lineage. And if you're an outsider, the reason they would say yes to you is because the amount of resources that you can bring into their family is to be overlooked, although they are looked down upon because they have basically inbred with a foreigner or a foreign class of blood. It's not so much about the skin, bloodlines.
Haptypes. Yeah, there's only so many haptypes there from if you're going to trace your heritage back to a specific group of people like they want to do in China.
They want to keep it pure still. I understand why. There's very much, very tight on. Koreans are very much the same thing. They only want Korean bloodlines. Like they don't like this thinning of their bloodlines. It's not about you being a foreigner like a white dude or an African dude or some South American dude or whatever. It's not about that. It's about the literal blood inside flowing around you. It's not the coating on that's encapsulating the blood. It's something different.
Well, there's really nothing wrong with that. They just, in a Western context, they try to make it somehow bad or something for people to want their children to look like them or to continue on their haptypes. Because basically, what it is, everybody's getting excited now. They're getting gene tests. Oh, cool! I got an ancient haptype or whatever, and that's how the majority of the world kept track of their family lineage. Just was father to son, father to son, father to son, father to son, and certain groups did it mother to daughter, mother to daughter. So I mean, it's not like a new thing, but all of a sudden for the Western world, they're trying to tell you, that's a bad idea. To each to their own. But back to the kind of
Yeah,
idea
I
of
got
the
off topic there. Excuse me, everybody, for going on a rant. I did live in China and work there for a little while, so
it's related.
I had a
It's
deeper
related.
look into the society.
Yeah, it's totally related. When we're talking about this decline, they knew, and this is another thing. I know I'm a conspiracy theorist because I believe that, that you never let a situation go to waste. So if you had plans for depopulating world, you might wait till the mathematical conclusion of the population plateau, which people knew was going to happen since the 1970s, which were that at a certain point there would be aging populations, and that because of the betterment of technology and civilization, i.e., like your social environment in the country you are, which happened in the Western world and in the East, just the Far East to some extent, um, despite different governments, but they knew that at a certain point people would have better lives. They would put more interest and attention into less children because they had a longer lifespan, because of health, because of medicine, because of a modern world. And so they knew that they would have a plateau. And then after that, a plummet of population around the world. So they started with these different programs, weirdly, move some people around, nation build. It's basically playing a Sims game from their perspective. I know that's a conspiracy theory about the aiding in the depopulation. I don't know, maybe through forever chemicals or pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, you name it. We could get into that, or even the heavy metals and all the products that you buy, which takes me back to the food. Which the same thing happened with all of the beauty products and health products, is that all of the smaller companies worldwide, nationwide, statewide, and local became part of conglomerates that are from the top down, that decide what goes in, how they make it, how they produce it, who they're going to do business with to get the supplies they need, the whole thing. And so we're at a point now where they're trying to transition us over to a completely digital AI system. And this goes directly into the air traffic and stuff. And I'll show you why. Here's Gen Z.
No, wait, Ransom, if I can add
All
on
right.
to that, just one quick point. Also, the media conditioning during all those changes, what you're talking about, the physical product changes, the food changes, the air quality, the water quality changes, in addition to the population plateau, you were conditioned by the media that once you reach a certain level, you shouldn't have that many kids because you need to enjoy the lifestyle and enjoy, and you don't have to work like a farmer like your parents did and all this stuff, and enjoy the good things because they had 7 kids because they had to, because there was no other economic choice. Like, why would you? You've been brainwashed to accept that. The media has just forced us along this trail of having less children. It could have been the opposite. Media could have just said, hey, man, keep it going with this 7 children and the abundance that we're about to come into with AI. You could have 25 children. It won't matter because the improvements in the way we do things. It's going to just, you can have as many kids as you want because there's going to be more abundance for everybody and things are going to cost less and more. Technology is going to help us improve our worlds like George Jetson. But it was the complete opposite. Have you noticed that? So the media, I
Yes.
would also include in your list there.
Well, absolutely, and that goes back to what you were just talking about in China about cultural norms and having children. So they did this whole media campaign over here, making it seem like it would be bad to have a family, it would be bad to have children, all of that stuff going on, and then meanwhile, we get to a point where they're literally telling you that they're going to be replacing the jobs in your country with AI. So that goes directly to that point. Now, think about if you went back in time and you decided that our country, say the United States, decided to stop taking anybody in as far as immigration a long time ago. That would have allowed the American citizens to have more children because there was more resources, which would allow those children to have those jobs. And the same goes for the Asian countries. Of course, they would want to marry into their own people, to make sure that, the resources available in their country are going to go to their children. I mean, if you think about it, if you have generations of people building a nation, of course they want their offspring to, succeed and do good. But now we find ourselves in a completely hectic thing where we're competing with artificial intelligence for resources that might have been meant for your children too. Right here, Gen Z Americans grow more skeptical and angry about AI, which might be a good thing considering that it's taking over most of the mid white collar jobs and upper blue collar jobs. Not really like as far as building stuff with tools, but tech and AI. They're now making robots that fix the computers and things like that. It's really getting out there. Tensions over AI reach new high after violent attacks on some of these guys. So they're already getting you conditioned that the people that make the robots and make the AI at the top are victims, and that there's the world is already attacking them for the transition over to this digital robotic system. So keep in mind, you're going to see a lot more of this. This is going to be a constant headline. Not exactly this, but a couple weeks ago they were showing that some guy got caught in one of those robo cars, and he was trying to go somewhere, and then a crowd approached him that were anti-robot. So you're going to hear stuff that you never heard before in real life, but you've heard on sci-fi. And why is that? It's because it's happening. Here's another reason why they're going to be shutting down flights is because they want commercial pathways for drones to fly through to deliver products to certain places because it's cheaper. And then what we're getting right now are smashed products. This is one's about they brought a package directly and dropped it on the concrete, smashing its contents. But we're really going out there all the way. Toyota showing that robot.
That was my Hummel collection, Ransom. They were delivering my Hummel collection. You see what happened?
Did the robot deliver it?
Yeah, that was my Hummel collection. They dropped on the road in Texas. Didn't you know? It's a fragile thing.
Well, it's getting really scary, man. If you've been watching just between last year and this year, which I told you last year that what the good stuff they're hiding, they're going to slowly roll it out. Here you got one playing basketball. Just look at it and realize that, they're trying to convince you that it's all cute. It's going to make your life better. But in real life, something else is happening. Here's the Chinese robots that were running super fast to the marathons. You might have saw that on TV. Here's another Chinese car maker, Chery's AI-powered robot for sale on major online store to regular people. And these are humanoid robots that they're trying to replace the idea of having a car and a home with having a robot and an AI car. So soon this will be driving your car. It'll be one and the same. And it's all over. I mean, from China.
I would
to
say,
US.
the robots would go back to that one and just say if that thing was armed up with either knives on it or some sort of small, handgun, firearm, whatever. I mean, that thing would be incredibly dangerous. Even just the power of it with its, the leverage it has on its arms and the compression and everything with that. How powerful some sort of, backhoes are, or some sort of,
right,
steam dozers, whatever. I mean, I'm back in the old days, and even back then when they were still using steam for what we would consider like, you bring it up to modern era, we're using diesel for these things, but back in the day they were using steam, and it was still just as powerful. I mean, just that robot alone could rip you apart, just barehanded, literally just rip you apart. Like, just take your arm and just pull it right off.
Maybe
like
not
Sasquatch does with deer and stuff, just rips the heads right off.
Maybe not some of these robots that they're showing right now because they're mostly made out of plastic and lightweight metals, aluminums to make it light. However, those parts can be replaced with harder things like, aluminum alloy, Air Force aluminum. If I said that right, airline, aerospace, no, all of that. Anyway, I'm having one of those moments. But I was actually gonna get there. Under the skin of all of the American humanoid robots over here that they're also pushing, and the quadrupeds and all of these things. They're replacing lawnmowers, forklifts, you name it, farm equipment. The pickers that they're always saying we need people from other countries to pick the fruits. No, they got machines that do it just fine. They even do the weeding. And here's 10 times robots have actually killed humans. And most of these are industrial type accidents going back all the way even to Henry Ford in the Ford plant, where somebody got smacked in the head by an automated thing, not technically a robot, but that was kind of the start of the trend back in the day. And then you go through here, you have the Japanese AI conspiracy. It turned out to be a hoax, but really what it is talking about is AI convincing people to do things. And then you go on to these industrial accidents, one at a Honda factory, Volkswagen factory, these robot arm that pinched somebody to death. And then what you were just talking about, you arm up one of these little robots, which this particular guy did, but for the function of taking himself out of the world. But you could just as easily program this robot that you can make at your home to do basically whatever you want, especially with the increase in amount and availability of programming that's now going to create a new black market to hack and hijack these robotic products. So here's a story about a guy that built a thing to, help him move on to the next world, but could he easily have changed it over to something you could program to go somewhere else? And matter of fact, there's some examples of that here, where the government uses them to go assassinate people or get rid of a shooter or someone like that. But to point out what I was really going to get at is right here. Remember when I was telling you that they're pushing you for the idea to see drone warfare right here in the United States? They've pushed the idea by talking about the cartel learning how to use drone warfare in the Ukraine. And, they've talked about the threat of possible cells or terrorist cells in the United States, creating drones, flying them by the Air Force bases. They don't know how to turn it off, blah, blah, blah. It makes no sense. So here you got the FAA green lights laser sentry guns to combat attack drones in U.S. airspace. So you're going to see these rolling out just like you see those license plate readers, facial recognition readers. The complete police state is being set up. And no one could really argue that, except for those people that are telling you that this is all misinformation to connect all of these dots. And, to sum it up, I had a video I wanted to play here. It's a short video. So check this out.
Майбутнє вже на полі бою. І його творить Україна. Це наші наземні роботизовані комплекси. Вперше в історії цієї війни ворожу позицію було взято виключно безпілотними платформами НРК та дронами. Окупанти здалися в полон. І цю операцію виконали без участі піхоти і без втрат з нашого боку. Ратель, Терміт, Ардал, Рись, Змій, Протектор, Воля і інші наші НРК. Лише за 3 місяці виконали на фронті вже більше 22 тисяч місій. Іншими словами, більше 22 тисяч разів збережено життя. У найбільш небезпечні зони замість воїна йшов.
He said, it sounded like a Russian, just like it reminded me of the old Hogan's Heroes, like a Russian front. Yeah.
Well, basically what he's saying is what I was saying about our invasion of Venezuela to capture their leader, that I realized that was probably the first military operation almost completely exclusively with AI. However, there were human pilots. So technically they're saying that wasn't, but Voldemort or whatever his name is there is taking credit for the first time an area was captured using completely killer robots and robots to do it. And they're getting you used to this idea that this is going to happen. This is happening. And, people are still kind of denying the reality of it, but it is real. And it is real.
Yeah, and I see the AI data centers here. This comment here in Louisiana, we're going to need more power than all of the citizens living in Louisiana to power the power plants. Well, this is going to be the standard across every nation and every state, every province. If you're in a different nation, then, or every emirate if you're in the UAE, then this is going to be it. These power data centers are going to require more than humans. So would there be a rapid reduction of humanity and the power plants continue, and then that what would have gone to humans power is being just redirected? Like if I was in charge of that, and if I'm like an AI, I'd be scratching my little computer chip over here and be like, I need more power, but there's too many humans around. Like, how am I going to get the power from them and get them to build me more stuff, but at the same time, get rid of them so I can get their power?
Well,
That's
it's
what I'd
kind
be
of
thinking if I was scratching my old compressor over here.
right. It's exactly like that. They're building data centers everywhere. They're taking the water, the electricity, and now I'm seeing kind of, over here the administration status quo trying to say that, yeah, well, it's not a big deal. We need that for a new technological world, and you guys are just in a hissy fit. But it goes back to me being a conspiracy theorist. So you're trying to tell me that all of these things are happening, and jobs are being replaced, and the appliances are being replaced. It needs more power. It needs more water. And by the way, we're going to shut down the air traffic for you to travel, and we're going to pop out with these brand new AI controlled planes and a brand new AI controlled air traffic control center. And then, you know what? We might as well put the AI in charge of how much power is distributed. Like you were saying, maybe the AI decided it might need another snack. We've already seen a lot of weird things like AI hallucinations, AI talking people into doing bad things, AI refusing to shut itself down, AI learning new languages to get around our protocols that we use to lock it down in one computer and find out that it's trying to get out of the computer. And these are all simple programs. These are old news stories. Imagine what's really rolling out in DARPA, in the military industrial complex, and the continuity of government world. They might be just ready to stage an alien invasion, but it ain't alien. It's just robotics and genetics created right here on Earth.
Yeah, and let me jump into an article here that goes right along with that. Senator Elizabeth Warren, one of my favorite bought and paid for banking mouthpieces here. Let me see if I can. Where is it? Plastic bags. No, we're going to go into the plastic bags. And oh, there it is. Just wanted to roll this through you with real quick with this here, so we can take a look at it together on this banking question here. What is really going on here with Elizabeth Warren? So I want you to notice the duality of the double speak and all these things here in this, because we're moving to this system. There's no question in anybody's mind anymore. We're moving to this digital system. But see, they want the banks to be in control of the movement, not having anybody on an autonomous movement ahead of the banks and all the laws and everything to control part of that, which could be part of the traditional control system, unless you believe X and Elon's already in that system, just trying to pretend that he's outside, but it still all comes into the same funnel. So Senator Elizabeth Warren questions Elon X about his new X money, which is going to be the equivalent of some things that are in China, like Tencent Pay, and there's just a few of them over here. Not in China, but over across the pond over there. So I want you to look at it as we read this together. A longtime critic of Musk and the cryptocurrency industry. Yeah, well, Warren is one of the politicians in America who receives the most money from the banking lobby, period. So, of course, she's going to be anything anti-banking or anti that would interfere with the banking, making more profits. So what they're worried about is X potential to run in and integrate with cryptocurrency, interfering with the banking, because they're going to issue their own stable coins in this. Now, issuing their own stable coin is legal under what they call a carve out in the new Genius Act. So then I request Mr. Musk, because WeChat and Alipay and Tencent Pay, which is related to Alipay, all over in China, you don't even use cash in China any longer. You use apps on your phone. You can't really use cash anymore. And if you don't have the apps as a traveler over there, you're not going to pay for anything. It's going to be very difficult to be able to do that. So further down, the reason they're so worried about this is these cryptocurrency stablecoin offerings from either private companies or something like Circle or Tether or whatever, they're going to pay you 6% interest on your deposits. Right now, if you go to most banks, you're getting 0.25% or 0.5% maximum. So they're going to offer you 6%. So what would you do as just a normal, oh, wait, I can get 6%. I'm moving my money over there. And depending on how this thing is pegged, like a lot of these new stable coins are going to put all of their pegging against gold and silver, precious metals, land, art. Like LA Token was doing something like they were pegging against oil, art, and real estate to keep the value of their token and then issuing coins off of that. That was back in the day in like 2017. They were one of the very first to do it on a real world asset basis. But everybody moving forward sees the danger of holding dollars and bonds. I mean, they'll have some of that, sure, as like a reserve. They have to appease the gods, kiss the ring, buy some treasuries. We'll still let you issue stable coins, but they're going to go way beyond that. Like what I've been reading a few of the reports, they're going to go heavy into commodities, which they feel are going to increase in price for the next 10 years. They're going heavy into real estate, which they think is going to hyperinflate away into like incredible value increase on real estate, gold and silver, precious metals. They think once this like bump in the road's done with the mispricing from the war, that what we see now, they were calling like $38,000 gold. Not financial advice. This is just what all these analysts are talking about. These people are from like JP Morgan, Bank of America, Credit Suisse, all calling like multi-thousand, 30,000 plus gold price. Analysts. Gold's super undervalued right now, and so is silver. And they were talking about this. So these stablecoin issuers are going to start loading up on these like hard assets. They're going to ditch anything that's not like hold it in your hand or put it into a warehouse type thing. So they're going to be able to offer you 6%. And they talk about this even going up from 6% to like 8%, 10% in the future, depending on their holdings and how those increase in value based on the stablecoin issuance. So of course, this is going to be dangerous. And they say the Fed fund rate is 3 to 3.5%. Well, that's what they base your mortgage off of. But for me, I know my bank ain't giving me close to anywhere at 3%. Are you kidding me? And the mortgage rates too, are you kidding? They should be what the Fed rate is. These banks should not be able to take you to 7% and double that, 6.5% and rake you over to coals. That, in my opinion, that's completely criminal. What the Federal Reserve's rates are as an interest rate base should be what we get our homes for. Period. They shouldn't be taking up 8% interest rates for a home loan when they're getting the actual money at 3 to 3.75%. That's just ridiculous. So then the question's on the FDIC. So then they try to scare you away. So X money is not going to be insured by the FDIC. Okay, does anybody know what the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation is? It insures you as a money holder in an American bank up to $250,000. And they don't tell you that there's an enormous amount of bank accounts that'll get swept clean because they're holding more than $250,000. Most businesses, for example, private individuals that have wealth, way more than that. So that barely protects anything in America anyway. And by the way, the FDIC, I think, is only insures that. So it's an insurance fund. And like all insurance funds, they don't have 100% because they never expect all banks or all claimants or somebody to claim on every house in the entire United States at one time. They never expect that. So the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation only has 1.7% of all the American money and all the banks covered for their insurance corporation. So that means that 98% of our money in banks is not even covered through the FDIC deposit insurance. So they leave that out also. Ransom, I know you had talked about that one time. I think it was 1.7%. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But they keep coming back. Well, it's not insured up. Well, if there's a true banking failure in America, nobody is going to get their money. There will be no FDI insurance, period. Because if it happens at one fell swoop and there's a huge contagion like there was in 2008, 1999, 1987, these other kind of really big ones where the government had to step in and bail out all the banks. Well, now that's a no-go. We can't do it. It's too big anymore. Can't do it. So if there's a structural failure across all the banks in America at the same time, in the same week, same days, FDIC is not going to pay you back, period. They'll have nothing to pay you back with. You will get paid back 1.7% of all of your holdings, even though they guarantee you up to $250,000. And this is what these little shenanigans and gray wording areas and things are, pushing back on, trying to say, well, you can't give somebody 6 or 7%. They call it national security risk and a risk to the entire banking and financial system by offering somebody more money on an interest rate that you're going to give them priced in a free market. And somehow that's a national security risk, which they already put the cat out of the bag. Like Anything that disrupts that is totally national security risk. So any of the free energy devices that you might come across, anything that would replace energy, replace transportation, replace banking, replace the politicians. Oh yeah, it's a national security risk. So when you look at all this, you're like, yeah, it's just them protecting themselves, trying to control the system as long as it can go, as long and deep. So the next system that's coming out, believe it or not, they really want to control this next system, even though this was all supposed to break us free, was it not? This was supposed to take us out of that control grid and crypto and all these, freedom of movement of money. I can send ransom, a couple XRP or some stellar lumens in like 2 seconds, no middleman, and we settle with each other without a bank intermediary. And then, that's going to be controlled now. So everywhere,
Right.
the grips of the control system. Now you're watching the inner circle of banking and the movement to the new system fighting with each other over how to bend you over a barrel for an extra 4%. And they're willing to rip and burn everything to the ground over 4% or 5% of you getting pilfered instead of them letting you have a measly 5% on your bank savings. This is how maniacal the world has become. I digress. Let it go.
Well, it just goes to show you that, just like everything, that they're setting up both government and artificial intelligence combined to have these control systems, not only for you to understand your money or why the food costs so much or the gas costs so much, but they're doing everything. Remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about the little law that they were trying to pass in New York that made it illegal for these different websites to show an alternative version of medical information. Now, imagine they just start doing that, and they do that for banking information. They do that for history on the government, or, you pick a topic, and they're passing localized laws that say, like even in California, they're trying to make new laws that stop people like that guy that's going around and exposing all the fraudulent daycare and hospice centers that don't exist, but yet people are drawing millions and millions of dollars from the government. So they got all these scams set up, and now they're trying to set up laws where you can't educate yourself or find out about the scam. And then at the same time, they have all of the algorithms and main AIs, basically just being the mockingbird, right? They're the mockingbird of all the mainstream ideas from anthropology to finance. I mean, pick a topic. The AI is now becoming the arbiter of information, and it's mockingbirding all of the mainstream media that once was called Operation Mockingbird. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is. So, moving forward, just be cautious when you're being offered a new financial product to replace the one that they just stole or purposely collapsed from you. See, they're afraid that these other alternate systems are going to get up and running live before they have a chance to pull the plug on the system, because I don't think they're ready for it yet. This is a controlled demolition of the economy to extract as much wealth out as possible in the longest allowable period of time. And as I talked about in my last couple of videos on Adapt 2030, this is very similar to the COVID era. Now, just before COVID-19 started at the end of 2019, there was two things happening. Like the financial system in terms of banks borrowing money from government was totally broke. Then they had to go out to the market and say, hey, will any other bank give us money so we could operate overnight? Because we got to pay people back overnight too. And it came back with a no. The entire system was so precariously close to collapsing at the end of 2019, just because there wasn't enough available money and there wasn't enough trust in the system that was going to pull the plug, and the pin was pulled there. But then at the same time, the dual layer was everybody was becoming aware of fiat currency debasement. And if you remember, there was 22 different federal, whatever country it was in, at their national banks or at their country banks. We call it the Federal Reserve, and ours, the Central Bank of England, might be another one. 22 protests in front of central banks across the world, nonstop, forever, daily. And then it was going to be 23 protests, and then 25, and then 30 protests. But what were they focusing on? The single point of debasement of currency and the way that non-government entities were printing money for governments, lending it to them, charging an interest rate, which they passed on to the citizens, which is causing all of these debasement problems and why everything was getting higher in price. Suddenly, COVID comes in and every central bank protest shut down. Now we're coming in. You couldn't go outside. And at the same time, it gave them the reason to print all the money. So then the banking crisis was solved because they could print as much as they wanted to give to the banks so they could continue operating. That was like a two-bird, one-stone thing there. With all of this heavy hitting inflation coming in, people are going to go to the streets again. Absolutely, they're going to go to the streets. Food's going to get unaffordable for many. Opportunity for you if you're able to look in different directions to solve that problem. Just daily life costs are going to continue. IMF says at least 6% this year on food inflation. It's going to be way higher. They don't even know where the inflation rate is going to stop because they can't judge it because of the disruption and the breakage so far from the energy markets. They don't know what's going to happen. I would say it's going to go somewhere around 18% just based on what had happened in World War II. That's all I'm basing it on. The protests are going to be tremendous. So again, there's going to have to be an event that pulls the protesters off the street, and a full globally collapse would do it. But at the same time, they're milking all the wealth out very slowly during this time until the citizens get angry enough to go to the streets. But by that time, most of the damage and the wealth transfer will have been done. At that point, when they have nothing left to lose, people lose it, as Gerald Celente always says. So then what happens? Then the governments have this whole thing that almost the entire citizens are on the street protesting the government because they lost their money. They can't afford the food, their houses, insurance is too high. And just the fabric has just totally shredded. Then what happens, Ransom? That's what I want to talk about coming back for the second hour. So please remember, buy me a coffee /Civilization Cycle. If you want to support us over there, we'll answer some questions for you, throw in some questions. We'll pick it off for you. And civilizationcycle.com. You can sign up for our weekly show notes, which I'll get done right after our broadcast here tonight. And we're going to take a couple-minute break, and we'll come back and talk about what was government's going to do when the citizenry totally revolts across the planet because of this rug pull. And then the plastic shortages out here in Taiwan, living it out here. So I wanted to convey a little knowledge and show you what's going to go lean first, like your plastic pipes, that sort of thing is food packaging. This is going to get nasty here with the plastics. So come on back to second hour, the Civilization Cycle podcast, and please share this link. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out TrueLeafMarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast. Product you love, the 72-hour emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Not only emergency food, but camping food, and you can prepare that through the week as well. 20 delicious just add water meals. Think about creamy mac and cheese, hearty chili, sweet oatmeal. 2,000 calories a day. You need the calories. You're going to need to think and move. And the mashed potatoes, easier to make than oats, and you can add your own flavors. Goes with anything. For less than a couple of takeout meals at a fast food restaurant, get real peace of mind. And a real question to ask, how long could your family eat without leaving home? My Patriot Supply, click on that link in the description box below. It helps the channel. Truth is hard to say and hard to hear. Most people choose silence. We choose to speak. Your support of our sponsor keeps the Civilization Cycle podcast on air and giving us the courage to keep digging. That link's in the description box below. This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here. that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
And welcome back for the second hour right here at the Civilization Cycle podcast. Just before going to the break, we're coming into a repricing structure, and the world's wealth is going to be, well, siphoned away. And here's an example of how it's going to be done or is being done currently. So if you're looking at, I referenced this earlier and I didn't have this right in front of me, but I pulled it up right on the break. So Sri Lanka currently is paying $286 a barrel oil landed because they bid in on that price because they're kind of the last ones down on the line to get it. Everybody was outbidding them. So they're like, we'll take it for 286, reaching in Sri Lanka. And the trader's like, I've never seen anything this high ever before. I hope it's not a sign of things to come. So even though oil was near $100 on the futures market, or even 95, 61, Sri Lanka's bidding it at 286 to get it delivered. Middle Eastern oil, pretty much at every destination across Asia, is coming in at around $150 because they're willing to pay that. What kind of disruption does this make for feedstock and products, especially plastics, aviation fuels, et cetera, to pass on to the customer? So there's going to be like this disassociation is what they call it, moving forward in pricing between the continents. So think about that for your travel. Perhaps, coming out of one place is going to cost you much more. And also here, the premium that's a $30 to $40 a barrel in premium just for the shipping because of the insurance. That's another one I didn't really take into consideration. So insurance has gone from 0.25% on your cargo up to 5%, which is a 20x increase. Now, war insurance doesn't cover anymore. So the 5% doesn't buy you the war coverage. You're just paying for insurance. And if it's damaged during the war, then that set of insurance doesn't cover you. Just like if you don't have flood insurance on your home, you could have homeowners insurance. But if a flood takes out your home and you don't have flood insurance because you're living in the desert, for example, your home won't be covered. It's one of those things. Same with the shipping here, the way I looked at it. So the Omani crude currently had closed out at 152, and Dubai crude is now pricing it at $157 a barrel in April. So the prices we're seeing on the futures market and like COMEX and things are completely disconnected from what the rest of the world is operating in price-wise. So we're looking at oil price spikes, and the Sri Lankan price was the big one that pulled in. And let me see, cattle ranchers also, this is more related on this. Cattle ranchers, their feed price has risen from $1,600 a month to about $9,000. Fertilizer's up at least 100%, at least doubling in price. So take into consideration if your base cost to buy something like, let's say your gasoline that you use in your car was normally say $160 a month and went up to $900 a month. Like how would that affect you driving? Well, now do a 10x on that, $1,600 a month to feed your cattle compared to $9,000 a month to feed your cattle for just certain amounts of cattle. What are they going to do? They're going to raise the price. Oh my gosh, steak price is the highest ever, $12.58 per pound on the open market now. Is the highest ever recorded. People are shaking their heads. They never thought it could go above $10, and now it's at 12, above 12. I wish I could get my heads on here, but I cannot get my picture viewer to do that. But maybe I will when Ransom's back on here. HSBC CEO tells the world that the price is off by about 2x from the physical price that you can find on other. So you're telling me that a $95 a Brent on a Comex delivery contract that got delivered in Sri Lanka for $286, it's not the same commodity anymore. And I totally agree. There's going to be the way that things are going to get priced in the world is totally going to get shattered here. That's what I'm saying. The movement of wealth and the pulling of it is just going to be death by 1,000 cuts. So your plastic is going to go up. That you have to pack almost all the foods are packed in plastic. That's going to go up. The delivery costs are going to go up because the diesel price is going up. The insurance to move the product, that went up. So that's going to add in more for the shipping cost to get it to you. So every step of the way, things are going to go up in price. So this 3% food price increase, and now the IMF calling 6%. It's just, I can't believe, what we're seeing here in terms of price increases. And it's staggering to see such prices, and Singapore delivery as well. I mean, Singapore at 210 a barrel today for the real delivery price. What we're seeing over here, they're underballing the price not to scare everybody, to have it appear as if the things are stabilizing, and not to worry, not to prepare. This is what I don't like, is the prices are running away across the planet, and the plastic shortages are ferocious out in Asia. Most of those wraps, films, pellets, precursors like the polyethylenes, polyvinyl chloride, all this stuff out here, whoosh, 75% down in production. We rely on that to get delivered. So the 30-day out, you'll start to see these shortages about 30 days from now, because I got some information for us coming back here. Oh, Ransom, you're back. Sweet, man.
I'm here.
So just before we're going on the break, remember I was talking about how they're going to milk the wealth. And if this continues, those prices are going to go up and up, and they're going to have to reset the system. And then people are going to get super, super angry. So how would governments deal with the people that are on the street complaining about cost of living that they can't afford? Like, game it out here, because you have a better, handle on that than I do.
Well, you know what? That's kind of the whole theme of everything is what I was trying to show before, is that people forget that not only is there so much inflation and increase in products and costs and things, but then they forget how much reduction in value our money has been going through. I mean, you could go back all the way to 1913, but even recently. So even though you think that you have so much money, it doesn't buy nearly anything because it's not worth anything, but also the prices have gone up. And that's what I was showing. I don't think people really realize how much it has increased. I mean, and that's why I was trying to show the thing from the last decade here. Here, let me get this off.
Yeah, that was a crazy one you showed. Yeah, take that off there. But they were saying 13 to 15%. I agree, at the very base minimum, and that's going to just skyrocket from this point.
Well, this is saying from 2015, and remember, this is when we were supposed to be getting a handle on our economy and everything, and then we went through, I guess, 2 presidents and 3 terms now, and in that time, 38.6% increase in food prices in the United States. That's basically 40%, like I was saying, and then the rate of inflation went up from 3% annually to 11.4 right then. And I don't think it went down from 23, 24 to 25 and 26. And they're trying to talk about stabilization. All they're stabilizing is what I was saying before, the new high, low cost of everything. And, you're talking about meat and everything. Check this out. And I think this has to do more with what you were talking about people on the streets. You got that angle on this article. It made me think immediately about petroleum prices and how that ups medicine, and then that causes shortages, which means that they would have to do certain things to pull back the amount of medicines that they're sending out and the cost of them going up. But this one's about it being recalled because they're not even paying attention to how much dosage is going in there. And then you got this guy over here. He says, gas ain't that high. What are you guys talking about? When do you think the last time Trump drove a car and filled up his tank of gas? I'm going to say not never, because he gets drove around his whole life. So unfortunately, even though people say he's down to earth and he gets the working man, he's actually out of touch. And really, things aren't really changing that much as far as things go, as far as increasing in prices, the direction of the country. So if you want to go down the pharmaceutical road, we're rolling back to 2020 again. And then you have this that they're pumping out to keep everybody occupied. But before we get into the too woo-woo stuff, let's go back to what you were talking about people on the streets. Now, if you've been keeping track, if we go back to 2001, some of the most massive anti-war, anti-neocon, nation-building, police, America being the policeman of the world, the whole set of ideas in the Fed, the whole thing was at an all-time popular high at that time. So there were bigger and more unified movement against war and nation building everywhere. But that morphed like right after that, when we went to war, into Occupy, the 1%, Occupy Wall Street. And then you saw all of a sudden a little bit of a splitting between these groups. And then we realized that the governments and different NGOs were artificially inserting agendas and money into these protests. Right now, fast forward a little bit more, you get to the COP, or what is it, the COP, I forget what it is, the climate thing, and then the bank thing that you were mentioning earlier, the World Bank and the World Finance. People were all about protesting that, but then all of a sudden the protesters got split into two deeply different camps. They pushed one group to the far right and one group to the far left. And then we got to see Summers of Love burning down things. We got to see a whole group of people start wearing the same outfit on one side, to distinguish themselves from the other side. So they set the stage for this. And then you get January 6th with a lot of manipulation there. And now no one is going to put up with protesters in the streets no more because they think they're the crazies, right? So now, when you're talking about the maybe food riots or people rioting against the banks, or not even rioting, that's the wrong word for it, protesting, peaceful protesting with signs, and they're not going to get any media except for negative media. It's going to put them in one of these camps that they've created on television to make people scared of their neighbor. And you've seen this program roll out for the last 25 years, was a complete destruction of not only the American way of life, but the European way of life, and some even like, Australia and all of that. And they put the cherry on top of it with this medical thing, right? And that was to practice locking down people, not just don't protest, but stay at your house, stay where you live, don't travel, don't worry about it. We'll send a robot to drop off supplies if it survives the trip.
Yeah, and to add, the reason that dovetails this chart right into what you were saying is, follow with me on the far left there on my mouse, way back to 2006. This was the first start price. This is the FAO, World Food Organization, on their chart on how they index things for the food costs. So 2006 is where the first price rise started. It went from, let's say, 72 up to around 118, and that was the 2008. So, it's not quite double, but that's huge on the increase in the food costs. And it took about, I would say, 2 years for that full food price increase to hit before it finally hit the apex there. It did come down for a little bit, but then we had that 2010, another financial crisis, on the real estate end of things, but then we had some severe droughts and crops got whacked out. Food just went right back up again. But you notice right at the start of 2010, it took a good, very solid year for that short spike, maybe, peaked up at 2011. And notice how long it took to come down, years and years and years. And then, we're right around here at the 2020 with the COVID increase. Now, you notice how much it rose up. It's nearly identical to 2006 to 2008, about 2-year spike. The same thing. It was about 2020 to 2022, about a 2-year spike, pretty much doubling again. But the whole takeaway from the chart is right here. This is where we start before we double again on the food index. So just based on going up, say, 60 points on this thing, where we are at 130 today, we're going to have to increase the bands on this to 190, way off the chart, way up here. This is what I'm talking about with the food heading up. Just based on historical last two spikes, 2006, 2020, this one's going to hit harder because we had available diesel, we had available fertilizer, just things cost a lot more. People couldn't afford their farms. They got kicked off their farms. A lot of people, lost their jobs and things, but there was a still full functioning supply chain with fertilizers, with pesticides, herbicides, fuels, dehydrator, natural gas was still available to, dehydrate the crops. Supply chain still moved it, trains moving, everything was still moving. This time it's not. That's the whole difference between this one and that one. But it gives you a good baseline on how high things could go. So just take and drive this, drive this line all the way up there. That's where you're gonna get to. It's gonna go from that 130 level probably around to 190 before it peaks. But for you and me, that 190 is, again, take it back to that 2006 price. So one from 70 to 190, like that is not a 30% increase. But even if you go from what the level was, which you showed there, 36%, we're going to be well up into the doubles by that point because things are already expensive enough as it is for food. And that's going to just be a family and try that's on a fixed budget that's already thin on the line anyway. And then put that food cost in there. That's not fuel costs. That's not like insurance increases in a home or the medical or anything. That's just strictly for food running that high up. So that's going to, cause a tremendous amount of people getting angry, asking government for help.
Right.
I mean, not just a few, 100 million in America, probably close to that.
Well,
90 million somewhere.
And
in that range.
you already have the government cutting back those things already. Did you see all the panic in Texas? When the EBTers went out to HEB and Walmart and whatever, and they couldn't buy iced tea or soda pop or chips or candy or, all of the stuff that they shouldn't be eating. I mean, really, they couldn't buy it, but they were already freaking out. They're making TikTok videos. Imagine when it really gets cut back where, the real meat and potatoes of it, where people actually realize that what food is all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I want to say that too. Like, that segment of the population that's been in that generational, getting the help from the government, the people that are going to require the assistance are going to be a completely different animal in this thing moving forward. It's going to be people who've never gone on these programs ever, even once in their life, perhaps never even ever any family members ever going on these programs ever in the history of their families, ever getting this assistance from the government. The type of people getting this to pay for the food that's going to get pricey is going to be a very different than just the normal that takes advantage of the system on a generational basis type of people. So just the need and want from a different type of categories of people that are going to be included in this is going to be something to behold as well. Now, prosperity, I know I watch Peak Prosperity occasionally. Economics states that the U.S. only has 2 to 3 weeks left of oil unless a deal is made. I don't understand how that's possible because we're one of the largest oil producers in the world. They're telling the ships to come and get here, but still, there's a gap between what we produce and what we use. So we still import oil in America because we need more than we produce. So I don't understand why Trump told all the ships to come and we're going to give away our oil when we really literally don't have enough ourselves because there's that gap between what we use every day. But we're going to give the oil away that we normally would need in our own country. See, a lot of these things don't make sense to me unless it's a plan to start the downfall in the next domino to move for the wealth transfer. And then it makes perfect sense. I'm like, damn, that was a brilliant move to do that. So I'm starting to reassess a lot of things right now.
Well, we haven't even started getting the oil being pumped out of Venezuela that we just recently made a new corporate deal with. We're going to move back in our
A deal
company
of the century.
companies in there. And then a lot of people forgot about what's going on in Cuba. Nonstop power outages. The people are done with their government there. The US realizes it. We've been offering a peaceful transfer of control. So they're going to be tapping into that whole area in the Caribbean. There's no real fear that the United States would run out of oil at all. We have 400 years plus of that type of energy over here. We can pull it out of the ground. We can refine it. True, there might be delays, but that would be, too much sense, because look at all of the workers you would put to work. Everything would be cheap again. We'd have no need for world policing or wars or none of that stuff. So, it's set up to be that. And then you were talking about a minute ago, new people on the rolls, new people on the digital soup kitchen. Well, as I've been not only reporting on your channel but mine since about 2019, I think it was. Articles started popping up about how barren the food, the what do you call them? The food banks and different stuff like that for the homeless, the charitable donation places. They all ran out of food a long time ago. They were talking about food deserts, literally, and then the changeover in the corporate situation on the ground in rural areas and remote areas where they don't really have a grocery store. They have a dollar store or a family dollar or something that only basically sells processed food, things in boxes and cans, chips, soda, candy, which are slowly being removed, from the options on the EBTs and stuff like that. So imagine you live out there and you're not really a health nut, but you've been surviving off of beanie weenies and whatever from the store there. And then you go down to the store and you find out, well, they just don't really buy nothing at that store because they don't offer it or provide it. Food deserts.
Yeah, and then think about that too. Oh yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Chris Martinson. He's the one who runs Peak Prosperity. I mean, they got some really great dynamite information. If you're looking for something, they do really a lot of analysis, give it away for free. You can get on their paid subscription, obviously, but just the amount of information. And he was one of the first dudes on COVID too, questioning a lot of things and brought on a lot of scientists and stuff. So, if you want to kind of bend around the curve, these guys are way ahead of it, and they're talking about plastics disruptions as well. So, to add on to that there, Ransom, what happens when those same bags, boxes, and things that of the processed foods can't even get delivered to a store because they can't even get packed in the factory because the plastics and the film wraps and that sort of thing is not even there available with the Mylar bags or whatever to even pack it to bring it to the store. This is the next set of disruption. If you might allow me to
it might even be a good thing, forcing some companies to go back to paper and less plastic and less trash in the first place. But they're not going to do that. They're just going to raise the prices.
Of course they would. Are you kidding me? All right. So this is in the newspapers out here in Taiwan right now, Foremost of Plastics. So I did a little research on it. And then I, popped into Grok to give me the timeline on it because there's a lot of information. It's all like sort of disassociated. Some of us come from Singapore, some of us come from Hong Kong. A lot of us native here in Taiwan. Japan's hitting a bit of it. And there's a bunch of stuff that's only in simplified Chinese that's coming out of China talking about the same stuff over here. So I asked Grok to run it and squeeze it for me so we could get it into an English translation. So in the long and short of it here, Formosa Plastics Group, one of the largest plastic manufacturers on the planet, hands down, as part of the Formosa Petrochemical Group, which is an oil refiner in itself, and the byproducts after they crack their barrels is all what they give for the feedstocks, the naphtha, and all these things that they do plastic. So you got to realize these three entities are all formed, and their byproducts of what they do in the main business is the next main product for a subcategory and arm of that same corporation. So the oil comes in first, it gets refined, and the different products come off of it. That product, naphtha, it also comes from natural gas as well, is one of the main feedstocks for the plastics group. So just so you understand that this all is in country, all connected through. You go, like even down in Kaohsiung, like we drove by the refineries just the other day. These things probably like 5-6 miles long easily because they're all connected. The oil, terminals and processing, cracking, areas are next to where the plastics refinery or systems are where they're producing plastics, and then it just goes on the chain down there. So they're all connected together. It's like one contiguous, like never-ending factory. Think of BASF back in the day. I mean, something even like that large that has been built out and it's just continuously built out, connected and connected. So during this Iran conflict, the delays in naphtha, and Taiwan is getting 8 million barrels of crude delivered this week. I saw that in a newspaper article, which will allow this to continue. But 8 million barrels is really not a lot when you look at the greater scheme of things. So for most of petrochemical, they declared force majeure on specifically ethylene and propylene, which again, these are precursor chemicals to produce different types of plastics, not all of them for food packing. Plastic piping, think about things that we use in industry or construction. This all got food stocks delayed. So they have reduced some of their output by 70% down, meaning they're only running at 30% on their plants out here. So that's the first thing to think about. And then over March, last week, coming into the end of last week, they already halted volumes. They were down 70%. And then some of them of their main supplier or main customers, they told them, we'll cut you to 50, not 70. But now they ratcheted it down to 25%, meaning there's 75% reduction in productions of plastics out here in some contract cases. So those who were buying these precursors to be able to run in plastics processing facilities in their own country, i.e. Korea and Japan and China, they're not getting it. They're going to get 25% of what they asked for. And also, if you're looking at the price increases here, this exchange rate's 32 for a dollar. So they raised it 10.5 NT for 1 kilogram. So a ton is 1,000 kilograms. So for us, it's about 30 cents. 30 cents times 1,000. So each price, just a ton of this went up $300 for a single ton. And this is just the first price move. They're expected to raise prices next week again. They're going to raise prices in May if it continues. There's going to be continual price rises based on their availability or not. So they've reduced supply of output of plastic, period. And we'll run through a few of the plastics. Secondly, they're not supplying to other people who make plastics that would be delivered back to America. So that cut the chain twice. And now they raise the prices, even if you can get it. Like you just said, Ransom, that's a great call. That price is just going to go up and up and up. So the last 2 to 3 days, one of the big things is the polyethylene PE plastics. They need these pellets, these virgin pellets. They're done. They can't find it. So they're cutting production here by another 5,000 tons. So it's just everywhere you look, it's naphtha's getting cut, polyethylene. And then if we look at the actual types of plastic, so you would know this too, being, knowing a thing or two about, building and how our world works on all these prepackaged items. Polyethylene, which is a substrate of the PET that comes off of that PET for your plastic bottles, the polyvinyl chloride, the PVC, and that's used in a huge wide array of anything manufactured plastics. PVC specifically, I'll give the main example, like pipes. Yep. So anything that's going to be done in construction, like the pipes, it comes in whites, grays, these kind of things. That's all basically in that family of PVC.
Right.
And then we got polypropylene. Now, the big thing in polypropylene are PP bags. India has run out of these bags to pack rice. So they're having a problem. Even though they have the rice in India, they got plenty of rice. They just can't get it into bags to pack it to move it to supermarkets. So their bags, they ran out of bags in the 50 kilogram bag, which is a little over 100 pounds. And that's for the export market going outbound. So India can't even export rice because they don't have the bags to put it in, to put it on a cargo ship, to send it elsewhere. They're down on the 25 kg bag, which is like a 50-pound bag, which we could get in Costco, a 50-pound bag of sugar, a 50-pound bag of flour, 50-pound bag of rice. They don't have the bags. And the 10 kg and the 5 kg, so like a 25-pound bag and a 10-pound bag, which we would think about in America as an equivalent on a 5 kg is about 12 and a half pounds, but those bags are gone too. So they're having to rethink this. Like, how do they get these bulk shipments of rice to go out to somewhere and have people line up in a line in the heat and wait for somebody to scoop it in and put it on a scale and take the money? Before in a supermarket, it was already packed into like a 20-pound bag. You pulled it off the shelf, you went in, you paid for it, you're gone. Now you need to wait that extra time in line just to get your rice. And people are freaked out. These lines are like miles long. like it was back 30 years ago when they used to do it. They're talking about like they drop back in time here. They are trying to work with the supply volumes and prioritize their limited inventory now, which means they're in I'm not going to say a shortage situation. Shortage means they don't have it. A very limited supply of it, which means that there's still going to be some coming out. Don't get me wrong there. But the amount of it is going to be a trickle. So it's going to affect our American food packing industry tremendously. If it's already hit India where they can't pack rice because they don't have the PP bags, then what happens when they're talking about films here too? So let me just bring you down to Costco, and this is in Taiwan currently. They're limiting your saran wrap or cling film. There's generics of that stuff too. You're only allowed to buy 2 cling films in Taiwan now, 2 of those at a time. Limits are already coming here on what you can buy for plastics products. Bags like trash bags, 1. You get a roll of like the black trash bags, that sort of thing. You can buy 1 box, that's it. You can't get 2, 3 boxes. Now, I'm wondering with a business, if you have a restaurant, they go through that a lot more quickly than a household. So how will that work for everybody? You have to buy bags now. So this is funny. Everybody's walking like an octopus out of the stores now. We're trying to carry 3, 4, 5 things. Everybody's octopusing out here because they don't want to pay for the bags, which are getting to be like 10 cents a bag now. America, some places in the States, like, you pay like a couple 2 cents or something, an extra penny for a bag, 2 cents. Out here, it's getting toward 10 cents per bag and up. And just the broader Asian market, this is, a lot of our production. This is in Thailand as well. This goes up into Japan, China, everywhere. Ethylene prices spiking, doubling to 1,400, but that's an old number because they had already taken that up since the end of March, guaranteed. I don't have the new number for you. I could search that out. So this is just going to it's feedstock crunch. The stoppage of exports, dialing back manufacturer is Hormuz driven. So I'll leave it there. And like, whenever that is done, we are done with this. But until the Hormuz shortage stops, then we're not done with this. And again, this is going to affect all food producers in America, not because the food's not there. That's going to come way later after 1 or 2 more planting seasons. Right now, if you can't put it in the plastics that you need, like think about cookies, for example. Like it's usually in some sort of like Mylar bag packed on the outer coating. You have that harder inner plastic that they actually sleeve the cookies in. And then there's usually some sort of like, film on the outside of it, that real thin plastic that you can tear open. That's just for cookies. Like those things are going to get unavailable or really, really expensive, which are going to add into the cost of every food product you buy. So if you need to add an extra 30% on the cost of everything you buy just for the packaging now, where does that take us in terms of food price? That's insane. And some of the foods won't be packed because they literally won't have the plastics to run through to even get the blow mold or whatever they're doing. That's just not going to cut. We're going to come into a food packing disruption before any of the actual food gets disrupted. This is the next little leg to what I'm calling it in advance here. Look for it.
Well, just from that chart that you were showing me, you could tell just by that, not only the packaging, but the distribution is going to become a lot more expensive. But just look at when you're talking about the PVC stuff. Now, I don't know how long it would take. Say the prices skyrocket right now and they go up in the summer. How long, if everything even went back to normal, do you think it would take for places like Home Depot and Lowe's, and you could go overseas, I'm sure they have their own versions of stores and things, for the prices to go back down? Because the stock that they'll have when things catch up was all the stuff that they paid higher prices for in the stores. And then think about this, that might roll around right into winter where people are buying it most often because pipes are bursting and things like that because of weather. And you could just see a whole basic shit show happening just because little items that you're not used to being expensive or not available are not just going to be there. And then you got stuff like this, which is just a random wrench thrown in things. So you get a bunch of products delivered to California They go to a warehouse, a 1.2 million square foot warehouse for sorting and whatever. And, some disgruntled employee allegedly burns it down. But what happens
Wait,
if this just
was
keeps
that the
happening?
paper? Was that the toilet paper place?
Yep.
Yeah.
Toilet
Okay.
paper. Weird, huh? No, I'm just saying that if you've been paying attention for the last 5 years, this seems to be the norm. We've had all kinds of food manufacturing, but not just food where they manufacture it like slaughterhouses and packaging centers, but even out where the animals were growing themselves, where they were either destroying it because of supposed diseases or, random lightning fires or random global warming fires set by human beings put a stop to production and stuff. And you have all of this just piling up for the past 10 years. Because we've been talking about it, the problems they had all through COVID. And in this time, the prices went up 40%. So imagine what they're going to go up when now they're telling you that the packaging, the fuel, and some of the manufacturing for all the products you need to run society all of a sudden are just super expensive.
Yeah, because I was trying to bring up off of Reuters here. Oh, here I got this one for us. One that dovetails right on top of that because the Australian fuel refinery fire took out half of their fuel processing here. So, yeah, you can't make this up. It's like you said, you can't make it up because this is just, it fits everything moving along here. This comes right off Reuters from this morning. Early morning for me, nighttime for y'all over there. Australia refinery fire worsens fuel supply chain crunch amid Iran war.
We just had one of those in Texas too.
Yeah. Have you noticed the pattern on that? Because pattern recognition, if you start to know that. Now, here's the thing. The fire's finally been put out at one of Australia's 2 oil refineries. Okay, if you know anything about refineries, they're not easy to fix, and generally they need to shut operations to fix if it's, there's pressurized points through the entire refinery. It's all about pressures and temperatures to get that oil, black oil, to separate into the diesel fuel, the gasoline, this sort of thing, to ding out the bitumen, that real heavy black stuff at the bottom that they use for asphalt. They're taking out the naphtha. So everything had the aviation fuels, like the A1 jet fuels, that all has a different pressure point and a temperature point to get it to separate out. So that involves temperature and pressure. You don't just like have a fire in a quarter of the refinery and just like turn off some valves and like the rest of it works. It's all interconnected. So this thing's going to shut down their right there. It even says petrol and aviation gasoline output affected. Well, of course it would. So what does that mean? Just less fuel. We ran through those articles in the beginning of the show that said Australia was about to cut flights anyway because of disruptions from Iran on their aviation fuel. And now they have a refinery fire where they produce aviation fuels that just totally cut down. Aviation's going off the table here. No more flights in Australia, right? I mean, it just checked every box in a lickety-split fashion there.
Yeah. And let's talk about like how long do you think this is going to last? Because you're going to have prices go up. There's going to be a bubble where it takes prices to come back. And then in the meantime, you have, what seems to me the setup for long-term warfare and issues. So once again, you got us setting up for drone warfare in the United States by installing these laser sentry guns all over the place. You got supposedly China taking a more active role in the still calling it a Iran war, despite saying we're not at war. And then the nonstop peace fire agreements, every couple of days it gets renegotiated. And then you got this is another one right here. Pentagon told I want people to remember this because they keep giving you different dates, but I told you early on that at the beginning they were saying it would last till September, right? So they already had plans for it to last to September. And then, somebody was bringing up Trump. Maybe he's doing this. He's playing 5D chess. And I just want to point out that the guy that came up with the term crooked Hillary is now getting Hillary. That's right. Right. The guy lock her up, all that stuff. We're going to get her to negotiate between Israel and Lebanese. So it looks like to me, if you've been keeping track, which I have, all the neocons got back into power over in the last year. I mean, just right in there. I remember all of them. You had Ted Cruz, you had Rubio, you got Clintons, you got all of these different factions of what were called neocons. And now you're not even allowed to call them neocons. And then here, what I was telling you before, that the next thing would be Turkey. And here Israel's trying to, push this idea that they're worried Turkey's going to invade them. They don't respect their boundaries. They're manufacturing weapons. And then you got over here, a couple of weeks ago, the Telegraph put out a story that said that Aragon was threatening to invade Israel, and they pulled that. So they had to retract that. But where did they get this idea in the first place? I think what happened is just like on 9/11, somebody reported the news too early. And that kind of gets us to what are they going to do when people stop falling for all of these things that they keep giving us to top the minds of everyone with fear. And I think this is what it is right here. They promised to let all these UFO videos out. And so they're going to slow leak this for the next year. They haven't done it yet. So right now they're being accused of the cover up because supposedly they were ordered by Congress to release 46 videos of unidentified flying phenomenon to the public, and they gave the deadline of April 14th. Well, just like the other conspiracies that you thought you were going to get to find out about, they didn't want to release that. But that's okay, because Steven Spielberg is going to come out with the movie to teach you with Truth Through Hollywood, Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day, right? And this is what's funny about this is they're saying that it's more truth than fiction. So we're just going to pull out this alien card, I'm telling you, either through microbial life to get people talking about that for a few months, and then slow roll the fact that they're going to say that they have, or that they were going to have contact with things. But on a lighter note, we got some Aurora Borealis coming.
We're going to talk about photons on a lighter note.
If you live in the north, you might be getting to see the Northern Lights here, the Aurora Borealis. I think as far down as Idaho. That's pretty far down. But yeah, they just
look at the giant coronal hole. Can you click on that picture and wide that picture out? I mean, look at the size of the coronal hole there. That is, I mean, that's pretty large, and it's way into the Earth facing, coming down to the equatorial band where we cross on that. So in addition, I was watching Stefan Burns, and he was showing that there's been and will be a planetary alignment happening in the next day that will overlap and coincide with this at the same time. It was like Jupiter, Uranus. No, it was Saturn, Uranus, Mars, Earth, and the Sun. In addition to this all going off on here, but we're just off the side of that, and all those planets are lining up with us. And he was showing how the magnetic field lines were looping out, and there would be disruption because of the CME from a few days prior was going to hit Saturn at the same time and disrupt its magnetic field, which, and that flow between planets on their lining would disrupt that and send a reverberating wave through, and expect more earthquakes at the same time the solar wind grabs us. So we're getting 2 electrical disruption points coming in. So he was expecting more earthquakes from that.
I don't know, man. Maybe we're all just going to get fried with UV. I just saw an article talking about how evolution favors redheads. And basically they were talking about the how they adjusted to the sun in the last 10,000 years rapidly, faster than they thought evolution could work. Even though I'm under the impression from studying genes that redheads were around probably for 50, 60,000 years already. But according to them, there's all this rapid evolution happening. And I don't disagree with that, but it might be devolution. Because of all of the toxins and changes in not only behavior, but we don't exercise, we eat bad foods, people stay inside looking at screens a good portion of the day, and they're not getting sunlight. So when they do get out and get sunlight, it's damaging because, they didn't transition into the sunlight.
Yeah, and I would look at that and think about the UV as well. Can I cook my record high price steak in the elevated UV coming down, striking the planet's surface? Is that like too much to ask? Can I at least cook a steak from the extra UV coming down? I saw some UV 20 readings, and I was like, 20.
You might
That's
want to look
incredible.
into the increase in price of sunblock and stuff like that. I mean, like, where does your sunblock come in those plastic bottles and all those petroleum products that they put in it?
Yeah, I don't know, because when I used to surf back in the day, this is like, and I lived in Hawaii for a while. It was back in the like early '90s and whatever. I lived there for a stint, and I was into surfing. Like the sunblock back then, the bullfrog or whatever, compared to now, I bet there's like 30 more chemicals in it now than it was back then.
Right.
Because I don't remember even anybody one iota talking about, oh, that's bad. It's going to absorb into your skin. All that stuff's going to give you, you're going to have skin issues later on if you keep using that. But that's all they talk about these days with the skin block, with the, the UV sunblock. But back then, I mean, you're caked in that stuff, especially if you're surfing, because you're in a direct right onto your head. And me with that, and I got sunburned a couple times real bad on the top of my head. So I was, using that. Everybody was, there was no, like, surfers are pretty into the diet and health and exercise, very, tuned into that. But no, nobody was talking about what a detriment it would be to put that on your skin. Today,
Right.
that's a main water cooler talk conversation. So think about that, how much that's changed just in 30 years on just sunblock. That's insane in itself that we could even have this conversation or a
Well,
talking point.
it's funny. They came out with all these, SPFs of different kinds, but then people were realizing that it was blocking the good UV and then letting the bad UV go right through. And then they supposedly addressed that. But think about this. For over 10,000 years, humans have already created a sunblock that worked, and you didn't have to worry about what was in it.
Called a
Right?
suntan.
They had red ochre. Every ancient civilization, every single one in Europe and the Middle East, were smearing red ochre all over them. And you can trace that back not only in modern humans, but Neanderthal knew about it too. So they were burying their dead with it. It was very magical to them. I think it's because they realized, they didn't get fried when they smeared it all over them. Obviously, because it even went down to Egyptians. You had the Minoans, etc. A lot of the people in Greeks, and that's why whenever you look at their old frescoes and things, they depict the men as dark red and the women as white, because the women were staying inside. They didn't have a hard life. They didn't go outside as far as the armies and being the farmers and all of the other hard trades that they had at the time. The women were fair in all aspects of the word, and it's amazing that for decades people have been smearing space age technology made of pharmaceuticals and petroleum products all over their skin, thinking it's the next best thing, when they already had an invention 10,000 years or older that you could just smear on your skin and it would do that job.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to market that? I bet
Some red
spin the
ochre?
marketing machine. We can get it on today. The marketing machine can sell anything.
I
The
think if
higher
we
oil prices
open
are
that up
such a good
tomorrow,
thing.
we'd be millionaires, like multi-millionaires. If you came out with some organic red ochre suntan that didn't turn you red, though.
Yeah, right. That's the whole thing. That is the thing. You're gonna be totally red. Now, people going in the water for swimming and surfing know that would wash off you pretty
Yeah,
quick. So you'd have to have
yeah.
a waterproof version, maybe using like seal oil or something. Baby harp seal oil mixed in with the ochre to slather it on you.
That's rough, man. Yeah, the poor baby seals. But you know what? I think that if they keep pushing with this technocratic system and dialing up the prices and dialing up the lack of availability of nutritious foods, humans are going to resort to what humans always have, and they're just going to start eating nature. Uh, Petroleum products go up, skyrocket. People are going to chop down more trees. You don't have bags, they're going to make paper bags. And maybe that is the ultimate goal, is to chop down all the trees like Bill Gates said, so you could stop the constant and very effective carbon request. How do you say that?
Carbon
Requestrian?
sequestration.
Sequestrian. Yeah. I can't
Well, they're
talk.
requesting you.
Yeah. The carbon sequestering that trees do, which equals that or more of the amount of CO2 that we're producing as societies, at least for the United States. I remember one time I broke it down and did all the math and found out they weren't even counting all the other plants, but just the forest as is sequestered the equal amount of carbon than our nation was supposedly putting out. But who knows? Maybe these crazy guys really do want to just chop it all down, put solar panels, and then tell you that, oh, well, there's too much carbon. See, it's your fault.
Yeah, that forget the war machine though. I mean, look at the different type of fuel types that are running through some of the older, let's say B-52s. This is these leave black sky trails going up there, not even white ones, because just the emissions coming out of the war machine, especially with tanks and thing, and like think about the aircraft carriers and like the bunker fuels and stuff, like the polluting that's going on, while at the same time they're turning around and telling you not to drive and eat insects. When they got a full war machine across the entire planet on multiple fronts running at the same time is kind of just unthinkable if you look at it in a logical sense. Like they're telling you to still abide by all these CO2 protocols, yet the largest war effort pretty much beyond World War II is going on right now. And the pollution
Right.
out of the war machine is just exponential. I mean, think about that. A stratotanker that's running and C-130s running and the old B-52s running from America over there and then back, or even if they stop for refueling at a European base and then back, do that round trip, compared to an automobile and an American driving, I am sure just a B-52, a single one going to the Middle East and then back, would put not just years of a single car's emission, but probably a century of emissions from an automobile in a single sortie coming back in. Like they don't even frame it like this. So that needs to be taken into consideration anytime we talk about sequestration or climate goals or whatever. None of it makes sense. Don't even talk to me anymore. The war's going on. Everything you talk about is frivolous because you're not talking about the elephant in the room. If you call that out, maybe I'd have a little more respect for that in the conversation. But until you call out the war effort as being the largest polluter on the planet right now, we have nothing to talk about. Humans aren't even in the equation anymore at all. Leave me
Well,
out of it. Talk to them. Talk to
I
the
was
Pentagon.
it's really an ingenious plan, because if you think about it, if you could make everyone get upset at skyrocketing prices, lack of availability, lack of real estate for homes and things, then when you tell them, you know what, we got this program over here. If you don't like the way it's running, you can go volunteer and get government help to leave to another world. Right. So that makes sense. And then you start pitching this idea that everything's better with less people, because then there's more resources for everybody. Plus, you can have the robots aid in taking care of you, and your life can get better. And I think it's funny that they came out with, these different movies and different stuff, and they throw out these ideas. So everybody, there's a lot of the comic book nerds that were following the new Marvel movies and stuff. And of course, I had a teenage kid, so I got to watch them and whatever. But they get to this guy Thanos, right? And I don't know if you've watched it, but his whole character is about a guy that comes from a technocratic planet where the resources ran out because there was too many people and too much machines and not enough resources or plant. So he got this idea that he would make the universe better by cutting the population in half, so that the remaining half would have more resources and live better lives. So does that sound familiar? Because that's basically what we're talking about with a conspiratorial idea of our opinion on Agenda 2030, even
No,
though
it's just
it's in their own documentation what they're doing.
it's not even conspiratorial. It's just our opinion. And then enough documentation going down the road will validate that opinion as earlier than what the general masses are viewing it as. I just almost everything you can look at in the last 50 years has been that, just being ahead of the curve. It's not any kind of theory. It's just, doing a lot of research and coming ahead of the timeline on when the mass awareness will arise to what this objective is for whatever goal is set. And Madam K, I had responded to your video to your comment last night in my video, because she was talking about they had massive floods, basement filled up, some couldn't keep up with it. And in my comment, I was like, you know, might have to look at it in a different way. Like, you were incredibly lucky that this happened right now while it's not mission critical, that you're able to add extra pumps in there to get it and mitigate your water issues while you still can get the materials. And even though it seems devastating right now, you might have been blessed by having this, because you will have all the water removal you could possibly need once you figure this out, and like, enough to extricate any amount of water that ever comes down there again, ahead of everybody else who won't have prepared. So you'll be one of the only last households standing because this happened, so you can figure out what broke, how to fix it, how much extra pump capacity you're going to need, and then the next time it happens, it won't be a problem. But for most other people that didn't have this occur, it's going to be a life-changing thing for them. Well, you'll just be like sailing through on your catamaran, out drinking cocktails, because you have already figured out all of the problems with this as it occurred. Because right now it's not so mission critical, but as these plastic shortages and the energy and factories are shutting down and things are, in the future, you're not going to be able to get a lot of these things that you might need to fix this problem. And I was saying, just trying to, it is terrible, and I hate that you're going through that, but maybe you were given this on purpose so you could work through this and look at it that direction instead of like, oh shit, my thing got all flooded out. Well, you're one of the lucky ones to have it happen to you now, so you can figure it out. So if it happens in the future again, it won't happen to you again. That's the whole thing I was getting at, because a lot I've been in my life too where some things seem like a gigantic problem, but it allowed me to get ready for a larger problem in the future that didn't affect me nearly as much, is because what I considered a life-changing problem was just a test, or allowing me to readjust things. So when a much larger event came, that previous one, I was able to adjust to the larger one, and it wasn't nearly as affected, or wasn't affected at all. So just looking at it that way, and then, prospered during those times, if that makes sense.
I recently just had that problem too. It's lucky. Actually, it sounds like you have a pretty big house, and that's kind of why they would put the hot water heaters in the basement, so it wouldn't ruin your ground floor and all of your better furniture and wood floors and things like that, carpets. So in that way, it's kind of lucky that it would be down there. I'm imagining it's like most basements and it has a concrete floor, and then you could just pump that out the side window. I just recently had that happen, and I took the opportunity to get a bigger, a better volume tank, so I could have more hot water. So since you're repairing, you can go ahead and upgrade. And if I'm not mistaken, if you can just get someone that knows how to do basic pipes, almost everything you need can get delivered from Home Depot right to your house, like even the connections and everything.
For now. Now, again,
now,
when I say
right?
for now, it's only dependent on how long this oil thing continues to be disrupted. It seems like next Monday, and I do follow a few analysts, and that seem to be pretty correct so far, that are calling it flares off next Monday again. So we'll see. They could have hit it wrong. Well, unknown. It's in the future. But as long as this disruption occurs, and those things already previously destroyed are going to take years to come back online, so you're already going to budget in for disruptions on a certain XYZ for now for 3 to 5 years, because it's already been destroyed, like not coming back. But once it comes online again after 3 to 5 years, it'll backfill all that disruption. But if more gets destroyed over the next weeks or months, I don't know. It's going to just continue to slowly go down the hill, and we'll know if this is a planned disruption. If it flares off this Monday again, then everything we saw with this break-in, it was just to rearm everything, and then they feel they're armed up enough again to go at it again, is pretty much the way I'm looking at it. So we'll see after this next week. And if it is, and we have our next show and we're talking about it again, like, oh, it flared off again, then this is purposeful disruption, because it could stop right now forever. And if it doesn't, then it's a plan to keep disrupting on slow increments again. Incrementalism of transference of wealth will happen without resistance, more than trying to take it all at one time.
It's also kind of, if you look at it as an opportunity for you to do alternate things, like you kept talking about the naphtha. I just recently changed the guts out of all my Zippos to have butane instead of naphtha, so I can have both. So I got the other thing I can pull out and use the other fuel. But you could do that with other things, like eating new foods that you don't normally eat and things that are available. Other people don't really snap to that. When things get rough, you can find alternate things to do and just do a little bit of different stuff. Plus, it shakes things up. It's a good way to cope with price increases.
And everybody can chew on that. So thank you for joining us for these last couple of hours. Please remember to share the link to our show. After we're done broadcasting here, it'll load up as a video. The algorithm has been none too kind pushing this through. So please do us a favor, grab the link, pass it through your social media, pass it to other people. You have to do that by hand, though, like copy that link and then transfer and paste it elsewhere. I know it's an extra one step, but we'd appreciate the help. Also, sign up for the newsletter. QR code's right there. We'll give you the bullet points for the notes we talked about tonight. So you have a talking point list, and then you can do your own research. That's free. Nothing. We don't share anything. It's just me giving you out some information and Ransom putting some notes together. Again, all of the information, and we just keep it. We don't do anything and never sell it off. Everything's protected. We're worried about privacy, and I'm worried about your privacy. If you give us your trusted email, I'm definitely hugging that thing tight. Nobody's getting that except me to send you information along with Ransom. And also, civilizationcycle.com is where you're going to find that. Sign up for the newsletter, bullet points for our show notes, and then buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle, which I didn't check until right this second. Did anybody pop in? Thank you for supporting us there. Silver Creek was the last one. Cheeto Jesus. I remember that comment. That was funny for Trump's nickname. I was like, well, I never heard of that. But anyway, thank you so much for your support. Buymeacoffee.com/civilization. Buy us a double espresso